Everyone hits a bump in the road. What do you do with it? Be inspired as we explore the ways people experience, navigate, and manage the ups and downs and twists and turns in this road trip called life. Welcome to another episode of Bump in the Road. The basic podcast is always free. We also have a premium subscription called Bump 2 that lets you listen in on extended behind-the-scenes conversations with our guests. Check it out at www.bumpintheroad.us. Do you ever wonder what makes you tick or why others behave the way they do? My guest, Dr. Vicki Matthews, can help. Her book, The 5 Elements of Relationship, draws upon ancient Chinese medicine and builds on the work of John Gray, who wrote Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. Vicki explores the importance of understanding each other and offers a model to do so. You can learn more at getalongnow.com, where there's a free download just for listeners of this podcast. That's getalongnow.com. Please welcome Dr. Vicki Matthews to Bump in the Road. Vicki, welcome to Bump in the Road. If you would, tell us the story behind your book.
Well, my book, which has to do with relationships and the ability to get along better, came from my own personal experience. My husband and I married, moved, and graduated from college all on the same weekend. And that was in Chicago. And I grew up in LA. So 2 weeks after we got married, we were driving from Chicago to LA for my best friend's wedding. And I don't know how many people are familiar with the Mojave Desert, but you have to drive through the Mojave Desert to get to LA. And it is nothing but rocks and sand. I mean, it is nothing. And my husband of 2 weeks drove the speed limit in the Mojave Desert. And I looked at him and I thought, okay, we can go a little faster. There's nobody here. So I said, can we speed this up? And he looked at me like I had 4 heads and he said, we're going the speed limit. And at that moment, I was pretty sure I didn't think I liked the man I loved. And it kind of began a journey of understanding him. Not just that chemistry is enough, but you need to understand him, the people you're relating to. And that was the beginning of the journey, was how to better understand the people in my life.
Your book takes a really interesting approach to understanding people. Talk about it a little bit.
Okay. Yes, it does. It's pretty unique, I think. So I'm a naturopathic physician, and one of the things that you study when you're getting that degree is parts of Chinese medicine. And for millennia, the Chinese have used something that's called the 5 elements model to help us understand things. Basically, they think of it as a seasonal. So the 5 elements in Chinese medicine are water, wood, fire, earth, and metal. And for them, they represent the seasons and the phases, but it's the season or phases of everything. We can think of it as, summer, winter, fall, spring, and solstice times, whatever. But for them, it was also stages. So you can look at the life of a human being, and there'll be a beginning, middle age, old age type of phases. So as I studied this model, which I dearly loved, because not only did it describe things, but it predicted how each of these elements relate. Water relates to wood one particular way, and water relates to fire in a very different dynamic. I started seeing personalities. Our personalities are in there. So there are people with water personalities that'll be kind of introverted, very creative, imaginative, whereas a wood personality, which represents spring, water in their model represents winter. So spring is a lot of outward directed energy, make things happen, buds burst through the bark to bloom and to create leaves. And so it's a very different energy that a personality like that would have. And then there's that whole wonderful thing of being able to predict how a water person might get along with a wood person. So I started using it in my private practice, helping people understand themselves and the people in their lives. And it really made sense to people.
What are some of what do the other elements stand for?
Well, so we'll go around the cycle the way the Chinese developed the cycle. They started with winter, and that's water. And that's, again, another key aspect of Chinese medicine is yin and yang. So the yin is inner directed and yang is outer directed. So water, which is winter, will be yin. It's full yin. It's inner directed. In nature, it looks like nothing's happening. There's a whole blanket of snow and stillness, but under the ice, there are fish are swimming, and little animals are nesting in burrows. So there is still activity. It's just underground. So it's a lot about internal activity for the human being. And then the next one, you go to wood, which is spring. And that's where everything starts manifesting outer. Again, buds start bursting out. Baby animals are born. And that would be new yang. It's the beginning of yang. Then next is summer, which they consider full yang. Everything's out there. And in our lives, we're at parties, we go to the beach, we're out there in the sun, and everything. It's about fun, summer vacations, things like that. So then I'm going to skip earth, which is the next one on the model, and I'm going to go to metal.
Wait, just one sec. Go back to summer. Is summer fire?
Sorry, fire. I thought I mentioned that. Yes.
Okay.
Summer is fire. That's fire energy, fiery and fun and connecting. But, instant connecting, like, oh, here's my new best friend. I just met her at the bar type of thing. So then the next one would be in their cycle would be earth. And I'm going to skip that for a moment. I'm going to go to metal, which is autumn. So we've now done the entire 4 seasons. Metal is autumn. It's where it's new yin. It's the beginning of yin energy where things are starting to move back in, starting to move inward. And the wonderful gift of metal is discernment, because they're sitting at the end of a cycle. They can look back and say, this is worth keeping and taking to the next cycle. This isn't. Kind of like when you're in a garden and harvesting, which is also part of autumn. You say, I'm keeping the zucchini fruit, but I'm getting rid of the zucchini vine. It's that kind of level of discernment. So then going back to in between fire and metal sits earth. And earth is nurturing. It is the planet we live on. It's the mother. And it is about balance. So earth is generally thought of as overshadowing and quote unquote governing the solstices and the equinoxes, because the equinoxes are about perfect balance of day and night. And the solstices are about perfect imbalance, the greatest amount of darkness or the greatest amount of light. And that earth energy is said to help hold the balance of functioning in the face of imbalance. So anyway, earth people are just what you would think. Earth mothers, nurturing, they're foodies, they love cooking, they love families and people. Any teacher you ever had probably had a lot of earth energy, and parenting really involves a lot of earth energy. And I also want to say that these energies, if you will, sit in us. So they stack up in our auric field, in the energy that surrounds us. And the one that stacks closest to you is said to be your primary elemental personality. It's a little bit like looking out of a window that has a tint on it. It literally colors how you look at the world and how you act in the world, react in the world. So that's your primary elemental personality. And if you've never heard of this, it's still there, and it's coloring how you act. So going back to the desert story with my husband, as you might surmise, is a metal personality. You do things by the rules. So regardless of the fact that there isn't a soul in sight at all, my metal husband would go the speed limit. I, on the other hand, have a wood personality. I am the make it happen kind of person. So I use a lot of my wood energy to get a book written. I use a lot of wood energy when I speak, or when I'm trying to help somebody, convince somebody that they can beat this, they can change things. So that's, and if you think about it, in nature, metal chops wood. So that in our relationship, we had to learn, I had to learn that was a good thing. I mean, one of my favorite examples is that there was a time early in our marriage that the day after Christmas, I wanted to knock a wall down between the living room and a small side room that we weren't using that much, and have a bigger living room. And my wise metal husband looked at me, and again, a little bit like the forehead scene, and he said, you realize there will be plaster dust everywhere, and you will have to dust every single ornament on that Christmas tree. It's like, oh, yeah, good point. We'll wait. So it's that yes, he chopped my wood, but in a very good way. And we've been married a long time, and have learned that he's not anal retentive. He's wise and knowing, and I am not a bossy pants. I'm a person that can make things happen.
What are some of the other interactions between these elements?
Oh,
say, like, just choose one. I mean, between, say, summer and metal.
Okay, so that would be fire and metal.
Fire, yeah.
Fire melts metal. So one of the aspects of a metal personality is that they can get too rigid. They can get too, we will, if you're trying to outrun a forest fire, you're not going to go the speed limit. There are times that you aren't going to go the speed limit, or you aren't going to follow the rules. And if we did nothing but follow the rules, there would be no new inventions. There would be no creativity. So a fire personality can soften metal, because again, we say fire melts metal. So when metal people get too stodgy or too stuck or too rigid, a metal person in their life can go, oh, come on, just, relax, chill out a little bit, have a little fun, let's go dance. And so I've seen a lot of relationships where the fire and the metal make a perfect couple for each other. So every relationship can work. That's the thing that's so fun. It's that there'll be trip ups too. Even like imagine two earths together. Wouldn't that be just like the coziest, most wonderful, most homey you can think of? And in some ways, yes. But too much earth energy tends to take someone to codependency. So two earth people in a relationship need to make sure that they aren't just about each other, that they don't become codependent on what the other person thinks or doesn't like. So and that's one of the reasons actually that I wrote the book was it's a beautiful model. It works amazingly in helping people understand themselves and each other, but there's also a lot of trip ups in each of the different relationship connections. And when that happens, well, the book helps you understand what they might be on the lookout for them. And then it's full of different ways to help fix that if that seems to be happening in a relationship. It also helps. It's a wonderful tool for parenting. I've got lots of stories about parents.
Oh, tell some of the parenting stories.
Oh, one of my favorite parenting stories is a guy that had been a football star in college. And so he was a real jock. He was a wood personality. He's out there tackling people and all kinds of stuff when he was playing football. And he came in one time and he said, something like, I hear you can change people, or I hear you can help with people. I'm like, well, what's the problem? He said, I'm raising a wimpy kid. It's like, what? He said, my kid doesn't want to play football. He wants a camera. I mean, why does my kid want a camera? Why isn't he out there with me playing football? So I was able to help him understand that he himself as a college football star was a wood personality, and his son was a water personality, which is where creativity and imagination sits. And oftentimes water personalities love reading. They love books. So he really, to this guy's credit, I mean, he really wanted to be a good dad, and he wanted to be good at everything he did, and that included parenting. So he really took it to heart. We had lots of good talks about, ways to interact with his son. And the bottom line is he went out and bought 2 cameras, one for him and one for his kid, and they took pictures together, and that kid's a professional photographer now.
Oh, that's so sweet.
Yeah, it really, and you can look at, I had a client who had a teenage daughter, and this client had really fond memories of learning how to cook with her mom. As you might imagine, my client was an earth personality, and she had dreamed of having her own daughter that she could teach how to cook, and that they would do all these, the grandma's favorite recipes and all these things. And unfortunately, her daughter was a fire personality, and she really was much more interested in hanging out with her girlfriends and doing fun things like that, and really was not interested in cooking. And the mom had to really pivot and go, okay, yeah, this isn't about me. This is about her and what will make her happy. So she had big, wild, loud parties for her daughter instead of cooking classes.
Wow. That element of understanding can really change a relationship.
It's huge. It's huge. It's so, the light bulbs go on, and you may not like it. You may wish. I mean, my mother was not necessarily a very earthy person. She was a water and metal person. And I remember there were times I wanted a cuddly mom, but oh my God, I wouldn't trade her for anything in the world. I mean, she's passed now, but there's so many wonderful things about my growing up experience because of my mother. So it is not just understanding as you move forward, but being able to look back and really understand somebody that was in your life that was important and you didn't really understand back then.
Well, the other thing that comes out of this is self-knowledge, which is invaluable.
Oh my gosh, yes. Like I said, I have always been, if you're on the committee, I'm the one that says, okay, I step forward. How are we going to do this? What do we want to do here? Not even necessarily, and this is about all woods, I want to do this. but the woods tend to take the initiative. They'll wait for a minute or two and see if there's another wood or someone else, but then they will tend to take the initiative. And so that was a huge piece. That was a really huge piece. And I also think if you understand that about yourself, you'll recognize it in other people. So there's like, again, an instant understanding of someone else. And that's a cornerstone really of relationships, is that understanding.
That's so true. One of the things you mentioned to me that has me really curious is that you spent a fair amount of time working with cancer patients.
Yes, that's one of the aspects of my practice was people that, and I never, and I want to say this very clearly for your audience, I never encouraged anyone not to seek traditional medical help with cancer. I was supplemental help. People need to follow the journey that is meant to be their cancer journey. And I just want to be really clear about that. But when I am working with anybody, whether it's cancer or any other serious illness, to be able to get the body in a place where it can heal, there needs to be as much balance as possible, mental, emotionally, physically, certainly, and spiritually. So we would have that level of discussion. And when it came to, okay, what's a problem emotionally? What, not about necessarily having cancer, but what in your life is emotionally bringing you down? It was almost always some part of a relationship. So that was really the impetus for me to start sharing this model with my patients was, okay, so let's talk about these relationships. What are you not liking? What isn't working? And sometimes it was their relationship with themselves too. But so it would just like, you would then take a deep dive into it. What isn't working? Why not? And then you can use the model to explain and help them, quote unquote, understand. There's that important word, so that behavior suddenly made sense. It wasn't that they were out to get them. It was that to get the person I was talking to, my patient, they were being themselves. And the patient maybe didn't understand why they were that way. And then you could help them understand that, or why that was a priority for the person in their life. And that understanding is huge. That really light bulbs went on, and it didn't necessarily instantly change the dynamic. They had to work on changing the dynamic, but they understood what the dynamic was, and they understood ways to make the changes. And it was hugely important.
No, that's really interesting, because once you can step back and see yourself or understand why you're feeling a particular way, now you have an opportunity to take charge of it.
You do, and modulate. I mean, I can tell now almost pretty accurately when I'm in the presence of what elemental personality I'm dealing with. I mean, I can tell another wood a mile away. I can, and a lot of it is just how they make me feel. Like, it's working with another wood for me can be just the most glorious experience in the world, because it's two make it happen people. But if we have different agendas, it can be a little bit like butting heads. So, it's all situational. You can't just make a blanket statement that, two woods will always fight, or two woods will get everything done. Ideally, two woods will get everything done. That's what you want to see happen. My husband and I have proved that a metal and a wood can have a very long, loving, fantastic relationship. Wood and fire. Wood is burned by fire. Fire burns woods, but also fire celebrates wood accomplishments. So it's the knowledge, it's the understanding. If I love fire people, I have a very, very dear friend that's a fire, and too much time around her is wearing on me. So I know to go, okay, this has been great. I'm heading back home, type of thing.
That's interesting. I want to go back to your work with cancer patients. Through the lens of these 5 elements, what do you look for in somebody's story that leads you to helping them isolate and identify the emotional issue that is underneath their suffering?
Okay, and I'm going to phrase that just slightly differently. There could be a number of emotional issues. It's not a single one. I try and hold it to, I'll ask questions like, if you could change one thing, what would you change? And you can tell when you're talking to somebody. You say, how's your relationship with your husband? Or, you're raising 3 kids. How's that going? And in the healer relationship, there's a lot of candid comments that come out. So it's not hard. It doesn't take long to figure out where someone is having a really joyful relationship or a very important relationship that's working well, and where something's a little off the rails. And then you can just sort of hone in on that and say, like I did with the woman who had the fire daughter, what isn't working for you in this? What do you wish was different? I mean, that's one of my favorite questions. What do you wish was different in this relationship? And they can articulate, well, I wish you wanted to spend more time with me, or I wish I had such fond memories of learning to cook with my mom. I wish, she wanted to learn that with me. And so it's just kind of digging down and, first of all, having a very good relationship with them yourself. And that's something, knowing what my primary element is and what I lead with. And then I know my patients and my pure relationship clients, what their personalities are, then I know where to stand myself to make it the best kind of relationship for healing them that I can create. So it does impact how I come across, because we have all 5 of them. We have all 5 of these elemental personalities, if you will, energetically stacked up in our auric field. So no one would ever mistake me for a fire, but if I'm on stage in front of people, I get very fiery. I can tap into that fire to be entertaining as well as informative. When I'm working with a water personality, I can tap into my own water and help be creative, or help them dream of something better or different. So as you get to know what it feels like to be a fire, or to be in your natural wood or your natural metal, it really makes a difference in being able to relate to people and help them. And for me, that was one of the avenues I used to reach out and help people.
Can we nurture any of these elements within ourselves?
We can. And one of the things that my book talks about is we have them all, and they stack up in a certain way. Some of them may be what is in Chinese medicine called lacking. They're there, they're just not expressing. So someone who can't seem to get anything done, they're full of ideas, a lot of water energy, idea, but they can't move that around the cycle from out of water into wood, so they can't get anything done. You would sometimes call that person wood lacking. The wood is there, it's the expression of it that's lacking. So there are ways to help build wood energy, for example. That's another thing that my book goes into. In Chinese medicine, the color that supports wood is green. And there are stones that help build wood energy. There are teas that help build wood energy. There are exercises you can do. There are yoga postures. There's all kinds of things that can help build wood energy. And so that's what I work with my patients and my clients is, you really could use a little more wood right now. So let's help, wear a green blouse every day for a while, or get green underwear, if you don't want to be seen in green, or sleep in green sheets. It's something that simple, but it will change and increase the expression of wood energy. What if you've got someone that's too bossy, that nobody wants to work for them? I mean, I had a woman once who went through 3 secretaries in 4 months or something because they just couldn't work with her. So that's a case where you want to take down the expression of wood energy a little bit. And if you go back to the model and remember that it is metal that chops wood, what you want to do is build their metal energy so that there's more metal energy available to help modulate the expression of wood energy. And the color, for example, that builds metal is white or gray. You can paint walls white. You can wear gray. There's certain stones. I'm thinking of snowflake obsidian is one that builds metal energy in people. So you can wear a necklace out of that, and that will help build the metal that will then keep your expression of wood down.
There's a lot of history behind what you've done, and it goes back to the Han Dynasty. Can you
Yes.
talk a little bit about that? Because I find that fascinating, and I find there's an enormous amount of validity in thousands of years of
Wisdom.
medical wisdom.
Yes. It's interesting. They took a really specific humanistic approach to how things express, and I'm having a hard time articulating it because it was sort of foreign, and I don't mean that it's odd to us now. So what I love about it is their ability to categorize and see cycles and see ascribe what we would call personalities. It's not what they would call it, and tendencies and all that, and then use it in ways that are government related.
For example?
Well, I didn't live, to my knowledge, during that time, but one of my favorite thoughts is that they do or did what I kind of do and say, what would be fitted for this position? There's if you know personalities, and I'll use our vernacular briefly, you don't want to put someone who's a introvert, like a water personality, as a receptionist in a business. They're not going to be welcoming and nurturing to the person coming into the receptionist desk. You would rather have a fire who makes instant connections with anybody, or an earth who cares about relationships and comes across caring and nurturing. I like to believe that was one of the things that they did with this information and this knowledge, is that they sought out suitable people, and they sought out, I did read an article once, somebody was writing in a journal that they thought it was used for picking marriages. And, this kind of, and I'm throwing our labeling onto these people thousands of years ago, but that they had the wisdom, number one, that they had the wisdom to recognize the cycle is amazing to me, and to ascribe all these attributes to it. And then to use it in, if you have a king who is there by decree and by heritage, but if he likes this, he doesn't like that, and using that. I mean, I can imagine a courier going in wearing a certain color because they noticed that calmed the king. So I have a vivid imagination, but that, I think, was one of the pieces to the whole thing that helped me translate it into modern times.
That's incredibly interesting and useful. I mean, you look at a resume, it's linear, it's hierarchical, it
Yes.
has to fit certain criteria, you're trying to push people into boxes. And yet that emotional personality side may be the most important component.
It will be, I think. In fact, I have on my website a quiz that people can take to determine what their primary, second, third, fourth, and fifth elemental personality is. And also on my website is a lot of information, summaries of things that are in the book about if you're a primary metal, here are things that you'll be good at, here's are things you're going to have to watch out for. And a little bit about, if you're being too rigid, too stuck, it has to be this, my way or the highway. Here's some ways to soften that approach, because you're not necessarily going to get along with a lot of people that way. So it is really just, it's staggering, the uses for it in business, in certainly personal relationships, in what color to paint your walls, what color to wear into a particular party. I mean, you can dig down as deep into it as you want. Or just use the basic surface level. I'm a wood, my husband's a metal. Here will be the highs and the lows and the challenges in our relationship.
Now, I took the quiz on your website, and my top three were first wood, and then water and earth were equally second.
Okay.
Does that happen often, kind of a tie?
Yes.
Okay.
Because several things. So wood, I'm not surprised you're wood. I would have guessed that you were a wood, because people that make things happen, like podcasts, like getting their act together all the time to keep things going, that takes a lot of wood energy. And yet the creativity of expression sits in the water, and you have a very caring personality. You have a gentle, caring personality. So that doesn't surprise me at all. And the thing that you would want to be careful of is that water, earth being tied, water and earth together makes mud. So they could cancel each other out. Each of them brings a gift. And so you will need to be discerning, is the situation you're in now, your wood has gotten you there because the wood is the leader, come on, follow me, here we are. Does the situation you're in call for the creativity, imagination, etc. of water, or which is more inner directed? That's yin. I mean, that's full yin, inner directed. Or does it call for caring, compassion, taking the steps to understand the person you're interacting with, which is more the earth? If you try and do both, you probably won't do either. So it would just be a good awareness for yourself. Okay, here I am, and this is going to call for me to do something. What do I need? What is the best expression of my personality to support my wood in this particular situation?
That's so interesting. And it so parallels some of the things I'm going through. I have to just chuckle. I think that this has elements of both fact and intuition. And I find that together is incredibly powerful.
It is. And I think in ancient times, going back to the Han Dynasty, they lived with both of those. We have become a very fact-based culture. And it isn't quote unquote true if we can't prove it as a fact. And we're missing, I think, easily 50% of our capabilities and abilities as humans by having to have everything be fact-based.
I think so too, if not easily 50%, if not more.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that we're missing the kind of magical essence that makes us all unique and makes us people. And, everything, as you were saying, it's so linear, so hierarchical. I look at search. I say this often, but search is totally hierarchical. It's about, facts, numbers, hits, all those
Right.
things. I often say that if women had designed search, it would operate totally differently.
I think so. And I think what the issue is, all of it's valuable. We are just out of balance as a culture right now.
Yeah.
It's the ability to bring the culture back into balance. And I don't see that happening anytime soon, unfortunately. But I think we can, and that's why I think my book is so important right now. We can bring balance back in subsets, like in our family, or help bring it in our business that we work for, and of course, in all of our relationships. And that is a big start.
It's a huge start because everything starts with the individual and it grows from there. And I think that if we can seek that truth and balance and wisdom in our own lives, it changes us and it changes everyone around us.
It does. And that's what I'm hoping. I'm hoping that enough people read this book that it, number one, helps them understand themselves. Number two, it helps them understand the people in their life at home and at work. And number three, it helps them start making changes. And with the little changes will come the big changes.
Vicki, you mentioned you have a free gift for everybody.
Yes, I want to help people, really help them get along better and help them understand this material as soon as possible. So if they go to getalongnow.com, there's a free booklet for them to download that summarizes a lot of what we've talked about here. And I think it'll help them start their journey on getting along better. So getalongnow.com.
Thank you for listening. I hope you'll support this podcast by becoming a Bump 2 subscriber. Buy us a cup of coffee. It's your support that makes this podcast and website possible. I hope you found something in today's podcast that inspires you along your own life's path, because sometimes a bump in the road is actually a portal into a more conscious and meaningful life.